What the Captain Knew, page 38. Anti-Semitism, the senseless hatred of and discrimination against innocent Jews, had been present in Europe and in other parts of the world for many years. But in the 1930s, under Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party, anti-Semitism was on a steep rise in Germany. It was against this backdrop of naked hostility against Jews that Captain Gustav Schroeder climbed to the bridge of a German ship in Hamburg called SS St. Louis and readied it to set sail. The ship, part of the Hamburg American Line, Hapag, was a grand luxurious ocean liner 6 stories high. The 937 passengers on board were mostly Jewish, and the captain's orders were to sail the ship to Havana, Cuba, where these passengers would disembark. Captain Schroeder was told to expect 899 Jews fleeing from Nazi-controlled Germany to board in Hamburg. He was then to proceed to Cherbourg, France, to pick up 38 more Jews. 6 of the passengers, a couple from Cuba, and 4 people from Spain were not Jewish. They had simply bought passage on the ship and would travel along with everyone else. So Captain Gustav Schroeder was determined to provide a safe and pleasant passage for his Jewish passengers, and there's the photo of him. What a brave man. All of the Jewish passengers were carrying permits, allowing them to enter Cuba. Most of the passengers had bought these permits at a very high fee from the Director of Immigration for Cuba, a man named Manuel Benitez. It was said that much of the money for the landing permits made its way into his own pockets. For everyone on board, however, it was worth the price. These precious documents allowed them to enter Cuba, though most hoped that they would eventually make their way to the United States. In fact, 734 of the passengers on board also had visas to the United States, but since there was a limit called a quota, the number of Jews or other immigrants allowed into the U.S., each visa had a quota number on it. Visa holders had to wait for their number to come up before they would be allowed to enter the country, and that could take anywhere from 3 months to 3 years. That's why the Cuban documents were essential. Visa holders would wait in Cuba until their number came up. Many of the travelers on board were wealthy, though a greater number had barely managed to scrape together the money necessary to leave the country. Some had even been released or had escaped from Dachau concentration camp and were fleeing captivity. The price for a ticket on the St. Louis was high. The 400 first-class passengers on board had paid 800 Reichmarks per person, or about $250, the equivalent of $4,000 today. The 500 tourist class passengers had paid 600 Reichmarks each. Each passenger had to pay an additional 230 Reichmarks on the return voyage. Of course, none of them intended to ever return to Germany. But this money had to be paid in advance. It would be held in a German bank account, and in truth, the passengers would never see that money again. But that didn't matter to any of them. What mattered was that they were leaving the terrors of Nazi Germany far behind. Captain Schroeder was a strong and energetic officer. He hated the Nazis and disapproved of what Hitler was trying to do to innocent Jews. The lives of all passengers on board were always in the hands of a ship's captain. But Captain Schroeder took the responsibility of providing safe passage for his Jewish passengers out of Germany very seriously. He called together all 231 of the SS St. Louis crew and instructed them to treat these passengers with the same kind of respect that they would show to the German high society. So this is actually one of the tickets. He knew most of the Jewish passengers probably had not been treated well in a very long time. After navigating out of the harbor of Hamburg, the captain recorded the following entry in his diary. There is a somewhat nervous disposition among the passengers. Despite this, everyone seems convinced they will never see Germany again. Touching departure scenes have taken place. Many seem light of heart, having left their homes. Others take it heavily. But beautiful weather, pure sea air, good food, and attentive service will soon provide the usual worry-free atmosphere of a long sea voyage. Painful impressions on land disappear quickly at sea and soon seem merely like a dream. Like Captain Schroeder, who was happy to sail his passengers away, Nazi Germany was pleased to see these hundreds of Jews leave its border. Unlike the captain, Nazi Germany was not interested in the safety of these Jewish passengers. Germany was intent on becoming Juden-free, free of Jews. But Germany did not want the world to know what fate awaited the Jews who remained in the country. Plans were already in works for the Nazis' final solution, the mass killing of European Jews. Until this plan could be put into place, Germany was willing to let some Jews go. A number of countries were already questioning the treatment of Jews within the German border. So, the Nazi government flooded the newsreels and papers with reports that it was being good to Jewish families by allowing them to leave on the St. Louis. At the same time, Germany wanted to spread anti-Semitism, so it didn't want any other country to welcome these Jewish refugees. Unbeknownst to Captain Schroeder or anyone else on board, the German government was using propaganda or misleading information to make sure that the Cuban government and its citizens would never allow the passengers of the St. Louis to enter the country. The photographers who were at the port in Hamburg, snapping pictures of Jewish men, women, and children as they boarded the ships, were told to take pictures of only the most ragged-looking ones and the poorest Jews who were boarding. They hoped to show that those who were leaving were undesirable, criminal elements. Shortly after the St. Louis's departure, Germany released a series of radio and newspaper articles and cinema newsreels stating that the departing Jewish passengers were fleeing from Germany with stolen goods and money. While Captain Schroeder piloted his ship through Hamburg Harbor, public demonstrations were already taking place in Havana, aimed at preventing the Jews from landing. The Jewish passengers on board the ship didn't know anything about the Nazis' plans. They were all hoping to leave their troubles behind them in Germany and to enjoy the warmth and hospitality that Captain Schroeder was offering them on board the St. Louis as they sailed to the freedom that awaited them across the ocean.